At this time, I would like to ask all unauthorized persons to exit the chamber. I'd like to recognize our distinguished senator from the northwest part of the state.
Mr. President, it's a dreary day outside, but the men and women in the state Senate is ready to make life better for the people of Georgia. A moment in history. A week ago this very day was the first ruling of the chair by our President of the Senate. Outstanding job he did. Also, a moment in history this very day, many years ago, the senator from Rome was talking to a group of people, and they all fell asleep from the excitement that he was given. So after that, he decided to become a anesthetist. Well, nearly the guy that puts you to sleep for an operation. Mr. President, the journal's been read and found to be correct.
I don't even know what to say. Is there the chair likes your tie. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them up to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 192 by Senator Jones the 25th and others, a bill we title Act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to extensively revise Chapter 41 relating to captive insurance companies.
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 193 by Senators Karen Shack of the 48th and others, a bill we title Act to amend Code Section 3587 of the OCGA relating to the powers and duties of the Georgia Peace Officers Standards and Training Council so as to provide for
public safety.
Senate Bill 194 by Senators Parent of the 42nd and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Chapter 75 of Title 36 of the OCGA relating to war on terrorism, local assistance, so as to repeal Code Section 367511.
State and local government general.
Senate Bill 195 by Senator House Stetler of 52nd and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance, so as to provide for consumer protections and freedoms of information regarding prescription
health
drugs.
and human services.
Senate Bill 196 by Senator Jones of the 22nd and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to elections and primaries in general, so as to provide for a new voting system.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 197 by Senator Dolezal of the 27th and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Part 1 of Article 2, Chapter 5 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to property tax exemption, so as to exempt all real property owned
finance.
Senate Bill 198 by Senator of the 45th, a bill we titled Act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 3 of Title 3 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative regulation to alcoholic beverages.
Regulated industries.
Senate Bill 199 by Senator Williams of the 39th and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to general provisions relative to education, so as required testing of drinking
health and
water.
human services.
Senate Bill 200 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 2 of Title 32 of the OCGA relating to exercise of power to contract by the Georgia Department of Transportation.
Transportation.
Senate Bill 201 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 5 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to public officials' conduct and lobbyist disclosure, so as to provide that any natural persons undertake.
Ethics.
Senate Bill 202 by Senator Ligon of the 3rd and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Code Section 3378 of the OCGA relating to title insurance, so as to allow title insurance to be
insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 203 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a bill will be titled Act to amend Article 2, Chapter 3 of Title 9 of the OCGA relating to specific periods of limitation, so as to prohibit retroactive application of certain
judiciary.
Senate Bill 204 by Senator Butler of the 55th and others, a bill we titled Act to amend Chapter 4B of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Athletic and Entertainment Commission, so as to change certain provisions relating to certain boxing, wrestling, and martial arts associations.
Economic development.
Senate Bill 205 by Senator Gooch of the 51st, a bill will be titled Act to amend Title 3 of the OCGA relating to alcoholic beverages, so as to change certain provisions relating to the issuance of the call and the setting of dates of elections relating to the
regulated industries.
Senate Resolution 263 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others, a resolution creating the Senate Emergency Medical Services Study Committee for other purposes.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 264 by Senator Mullis of the 53rd and others, a resolution creating the Joint Emergency Medical Services Study Committee for other purposes.
Rules.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 185 by Representative Williamson, the 115th, and others, a bill titled Act to amend Chapter 1 of Title 7 of the OCGA relating to financial institutions so as to change certain definitions to provide for related matters.
Banking and finance.
House Bill 228 by Representative Welch of the 110th and others, a bill will be titled enactment in Chapter 3 of Title 19 of the OCGA relating to marriage generally, so as to change the minimum age of marriage of a child from 16 to 17 years of age and to require any person who is 17 years of age to have been emancipated.
Judiciary.
House Bill 284 by Representative Carson of 46 and others, a bill will be titled enact to provide that future elections for the office of Chief Judge of the Magistrate Court of Cobb County shall be nonpartisan.
State and local government.
House Bill 285 by Representative Carson of 46 and others, a bill will be titled enact to provide that future elections for the office of Probate Judge of Cobb County shall be nonpartisan elections to provide for related matters.
State and local government.
House Bill 316 by Representative Fleming of the 121st and others, a bill will be titled enactment in Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to primaries and elections generally.
Ethics.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs has had our consideration of the following legislation. Instructor Moore, same back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 97 do pass. Senate Bill 76 do pass by substitute. Sent by Senator Wilkinson of the 50th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions has had our consideration of the following legislation. Instructor Moore, same back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 37 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 157 do pass. Sent by Senator Williams of the 3rd. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Special Judiciary has had our consideration of the following legislation. Instructor Board sent back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 29 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 178 do pass by substitute. House Bill 92 do pass. Somebody Senator Jordan the 6th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had our consideration of the following legislation. Instructor Board sent back to the Senate for recommendation. House Bill 166 do pass by substitute. Somebody Senator Watson the 1st. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had our consideration of the following legislation. Instructor Board sent back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 100 do pass. Senate Bill 146 do pass by substitute. Senate Bill 153 do pass by substitute. Sent by Senator Couser the 46th. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Transportation has had a consideration of following legislation. Instructor Board sent back to Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 131 do pass by substitute. Sent by Senator Beach of the 21st. And Mr. President, Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had a consideration of following legislation. Sent back to Senate for recommendation. House Bill 304 do pass by Senator Kirk of the 13th. That concludes the order.
Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 9 by Senator Jones the 22nd and others, invasion of privacy, sexual extortion, prohibit definitions, elements of the crime, provide. Senate Bill 104 by Senator Payne of the 54th and others, resuscitation, parental requirement for consent, revised. Senate Bill 127 by Senator Hufstedler of the 52nd and others, motor fuel tax, electronic filing of certain reports require. Senate Bill 128 by Senator Hufstedler of the 52nd and others, income tax payment, person required to submit a statement of taxes withheld shall be assessed a late penalty after the due date, provide. Senate Bill 132 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, insurance modernization and updates, provide. Commission on the Georgia Health Insurance Risk Pool, repeal Article 2 of Chapter 29A. Senate Bill 133 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, insurance modernization and updates, provide. Senate Bill 135 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, workers' compensation, certain provisions change. Senate Bill 137 by Senator Lucas of the 26th and others, Tuskegee University specialty license plate established. Senate Bill 142 by Senator Walker of the 20th and others, insurance statement indicating that the subscriber's health policy is fully insured is included on a subscriber's health insurance identification card required. Senate Bill 149 by Senator Robertson of the 29th and others, motor vehicles retain custody of the vehicle under certain conditions, valid number license plate without required revalidation decal affixed permit. Senate Bill 154 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, Georgia Coroners Training Council, hearing complaints from outside parties regarding coroners, provide. Senate Bill 156 by Senator Martin of the 9th, Insurance Division of Domestic Insurance to two or more resulting domestic insurers, provide. Senate Bill 158 by Senator Strickland of the 17th and others, Anti-Human Trafficking Protective Response Act. House Bill 183 by Representative Harrell of the 106th and others, ad valorem tax, right to appeal for any taxpayer that fails to file a property tax return or whose property tax return was deemed returned, provide. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
It's now time for our morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 38th for business outside the Capitol.
Without objection, the senator from the 38th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 45th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the coast, the senator from the 3rd.
Without objection, the senator from the 3rd is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning. I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 16th.
Without objection, the senator from the 16th is excused. Chair recognizes the senator from Forsyth.
Good morning, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 28th and 30th for business inside the chamber.
Without
Capitol.
objection, the senators from the 28th and the 30th are excused. Are there any additional motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll of the senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. It's now time for our morning devotional. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations, and doorkeepers, please secure the doors. This time I'd like to recognize the senator from the 14th to lead us in our pledge and to introduce to us our chaplain of the day.
Please join us as we honor our American flag. Now our Georgia flag. Morning, colleagues. It's not often that we have the opportunity to bring one of our closest friends to this chamber to be able to bring a devotion. Many of us, as I said this morning, have our five closest friends that regardless of thick or thin, whether doing right or wrong, or whether we need someone to encourage or hold us accountable, that will be there. I had the opportunity several years ago to work as a chairman of personnel at First Baptist Cartersville when we brought Jeremy Morton up to Cartersville from the Warner Robins Perry area. He came into an environment that where our church really needed some leadership. And that church came together and started doing tremendous work in Cartersville. What we didn't realize is the Lord was leading him to something even bigger, and that was over to First Baptist Woodstock alongside Johnny Hunt. And so today I'd ask if you turn your attention, listen to my good friend Jeremy Morton as he brings our devotion of the day.
Thank you, Senator Thompson. Good morning, men and women of the Georgia Senate. The state of Georgia is a busy state. Atlanta is a busy city. This is a busy capital. And you and I are busy men and women. Can I confess a sin to you? I'm often far too busy. And this is what happens in my life when I'm busy. I get stressed. I get tired. I become anxious. I overeat. And my wife and children would even testify that I can become irritable. Just like you and me, my life has been crazy the last couple of days. This is what I've dealt with just since this past Sunday morning. I'm entertaining guests at my home. I have a deathly sick relative. I had breakfast on Monday morning with a concerned church member. I went to a denominational meeting, a Baptist meeting. I had lunch on Monday with a Sunday school teacher. I'm dealing with a personal crisis with a member of our staff. I've been working on my Sunday sermon because Sunday's always coming. I attended a staff meeting. I'm trying to fix a water leak in my backyard. Who knew we'd get 14 inches of rain in Cherokee County and water's creeping into my basement? I took my daughter to volleyball. I'm sorting through calendar events. I spoke at Truett McConnell College yesterday morning and in Birmingham, Alabama last night. And now it's just Wednesday morning. It kind of makes you a nervous wreck, doesn't it? And you're dealing with health care and the economy and transportation and crisis situations from important people in the area that you represent. You're dealing with all sorts of issues. But Mark tells us this in Mark chapter 1. Jesus was busy. Jesus had all kinds of priorities. But when Jesus was busy, he was calm. He had energy. He was joyful. When I say we're busy, what do I mean? Busyness means that our demands are over here, but our time and our energy are over here. Demands here, time and energy here. Mark gives us a snapshot in Mark 1 of just one typical day in the life of Jesus. Get this. It was a Sabbath weekend. Jesus goes to the synagogue, and he's the visiting rabbi. He preaches. Quite a commotion in the middle of his sermon, a crisis situation, someone trapped by an evil spirit. Jesus deals with that. He ministers all morning, goes to a friend's house for lunch. If he's a Sunday preacher like me, big lunch, time for a nap. Oh no, not for Jesus. He has to deal with Peter's mother-in-law. She has a fever. He's healing her and ministering to her family. It's getting late in the day now, and the Bible says that Jesus demands. His popularity was growing. Mark 1:33 says this, that in the town of Capernaum, literally the whole community was standing at his door, and they're bringing to him the sick and the afflicted and the ill and those trapped by evil spirits. This would be the equivalent of every single person in your region having your cell number and texting you about everything. The whole community is standing at the door. What a busy day. But then Mark 1:35 tells us this. The very next morning, after the busy typical day that Jesus had, early in the morning, Mark 1:35, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, he went outside, he made his way to a deserted place, and before the sun rose, Jesus was praying. Early the next morning, after an exceptionally busy day, you would think, Jesus, you should sleep in. Jesus, hit the snooze. Jesus, have a slow morning. Drink coffee and watch it. No, what does Jesus do after a very busy day? The very next morning, he prioritizes this. He gets up early and he prays. The next verse tells us that while Jesus was praying, Peter shows up and says, Lord, we've been looking for you. We've been searching for you. Meaning we've been searching for you for a couple of hours. Everyone is looking for you. The irony is this, while they're all looking for Jesus, Jesus is looking for his Father in heaven in prayer. If Jesus knows that he can only get strength from solitude, what about you and me? If Jesus knows that he needs to be refilled so that he can have energy and wisdom, what about you and me? If Jesus knows that there's certain kinds of needs and certain kinds of evil in the community that you can only fight through prayer, what about you and me? Apparently, Mark is using the example of Jesus to clue us into this. There is a certain assurance. There's a certain confidence. There's a certain energy. There's a certain power. There's a certain wisdom that is present in a leader's life that is only gained by spending secret time with God in prayer and making solitude and intimacy with Christ a priority. You are important people and you are making many, many important decisions. But I want to say this to you with the humility of Christ in my heart. Whatever you intend to do in this chamber, whoever you intend to become in this chamber, and wherever you intend to go from this chamber, it will never be the best and the ideal until it's bathed in prayer. If it's your idea and your energy and your strength, it will only take the people of Georgia so far. But if you will prioritize in desperation alone time with God, you will get wisdom from another world. I'm not telling you life's going to get less busy. It's probably not. I don't see smartphones going away and the news media going away and the demands of our people. Those things aren't going away. But maybe if we could have a posture in heart that is healthy and dependent upon Christ, it'll be better. I've missed time in prayer before in my life, and I've regretted it. I've skipped prayer time. I've slept in and missed my morning Bible time and prayer time. I've skipped it, and I've regretted it. but I've never prioritized it and done it and regretted it. I'm a man of prayer, but I probably don't pray enough. I want to learn to pray more so that I'll be a new man and a new husband and a new daddy and a new pastor each and every day for people who are calling upon me. And I pray it's also the truth for you as well. Let's pray together. God in heaven, thank you for these men and women. Thank you for the great responsibility and the privilege that you've given to them. They are important, and they have all types of priorities before them this day and during this session. But, oh God of heaven, would you, in a humble and tender way, let all these important leaders know that without the wisdom of God, there's no way they can make the best decision for the people of Georgia. God, we're so busy and we're spread so thin and we're running on fumes, and we have a tendency to reach deep into our reserves and make decisions in our own strength instead of seeking your heart as our Father and saying, God, how would you have me to vote? What would you have me to do in terms of this piece of legislation? So God, may we prioritize time with you and not give you our leftovers, and instead, like Jesus, even in the midst of busyness, may we carve out alone time and private time so that we can be in tune with you, our Maker, our Father, our Creator, and say, oh God, how would you have me minister on this day? We love you. We praise you. We acknowledge every good thing in the state of Georgia, every good thing in our lives is because of your grace. And God, the blessings we've been given, it says so much more about you than it ever could about us. So in the name of Christ, we say thank you, and I pray that you would bless these men and women with wisdom and energy and insight and a spirit of unity that can only happen as these people learn to pray. Oh God, like your disciples asked, teach us to pray. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Thank you.
Are there any unanimous consents? Chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to withdraw Senate Resolution 249.
Will the Secretary read the caption?
Senate Resolution 249 by Senator Anderson, the 43rd, and others, a resolution recognizing and committing the Georgia chapter of the National Council of Negro Women and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Senator from the 43rd is asked for unanimous consent to withdraw Senate Resolution 249. Is there objection? Hearing no objection, Senate Resolution 249 is withdrawn. We have some special guests with us today that we would like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Mr. President, there is no resolution to read.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 38th to introduce our, 34th. I'm stumbling early. Introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. On behalf of my colleague from the 38th, I'd like to introduce to you all Dr. Carolyn Curry, who has provided distinguished encouragement, guidance, and leadership during her decades of service to others and her scholarly studies, research, and teaching has resulted in far-reaching and stellar accomplishments, which has included being named Georgia Author of the Year 2015. In March 2014, Mercer University Press in Macon, Georgia, published her book, Suffer and Grow Strong, The Life of Ella Gertrude Clanton Thomas, 1834 through 1907. It received the 2014 Award for Excellence using the holding of the archives from the Georgia Historical Records Advisory Council. University Systems or Georgia. She also received Georgia Author of the Year in Biography in 2015 from Georgia Writers Association. The Georgia Center for the Books selected her book as one of the 2015 10 books all Georgians should read. Dr. Curry founded Women Alone Together in 2002, and since then, she has led the organization to become the dynamic, viable entity it is today. In addition to writing papers on significant women's issues, she often speaks to various groups around the country. Family is a priority for Dr. Curry. She has been married to Bill Curry, former head football coach at Georgia Tech, University of Alabama, University of Kentucky, and Georgia State University for more than 50 years. She is mother to 2 and the grandmother of 7. We will hear brief remarks from Dr. Carolyn Curry.
Thank you very much. I am delighted to be here today, and I'm here to speak on the behalf of women because March is Women's History Month, and we should remember the women. And I also want to remember a woman that I wrote a book about named Ella Gertrude Clanton Thomas. Is anybody from Augusta here today? Well, people in Augusta know her because she was born there in 1834. But she went through the devastating Civil War. Her family lost everything. But at the end of her life, she moved to Atlanta and she dedicated her last years to helping women. And she became president of the Georgia Women's Suffrage Association. Now, we take voting for granted, we women do today. But they had to fight very hard to get the vote. In fact, 72 years, and she did not even live to see the vote in 1920. But she came to the House of Representatives here in this building in 1899. And that was the year she was elected president. But she was such a dynamic speaker, and she was such a progressive woman that she stood in the House of Representatives as a Methodist woman. She used a Christian metaphor, and she said this to them that day in 1899. Woman was not taken from the head of man, she is not his superior. Woman was not taken from the foot of man, she is not his inferior, but woman was taken from the side of man, and there she should stand, his equal in the work of the world. It's exciting that we have so many women now in the Senate and the House of Representatives of Georgia. And I'm also very excited that we have so many women in Congress, 102 in the House of Representatives and 25 in the Senate. We have come a long way, but we still have a way to go. So I want you to help us to get everything that we need to be truly equal, as Ella Gertrude said in 1899, that women should be equal to men in the work of the world. Thank you very much.
I think Dr. Curry has visitors with her up in the gallery. Would you please stand so we could recognize you? Thank you.
We have some additional special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 132 by Senator Kennedy of the 18th and others, a resolution commending the Boy Scouts of America and recognizing February 27, 2019 as Scouts BSA Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas scouting evolved during the early 1900s through the efforts of several men dedicated to bettering youth who conceived a program of outdoor activities that developed skills in young people and gave them a sense of enjoyment, fellowship, and a code of conduct for everyday living. And whereas such a worthwhile program deserves respect, admiration, gratitude, and commendation for the impact it has had and continues to have on the character of the youth of this state and this nation. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the Boy Scouts of America for their many achievements and contributions to the welfare of the state and recognize February 27, 2019 as Scouts BSA Day at the State Capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 18th to introduce our great group of special guests here today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning to my colleagues. It's a real special honor for me to get to talk about and bring before you some excellent Boy Scouts from the Boy Scouts of America as we commend them today. Boy Scouts of America is recognized today based on its founding in 1910, and it has helped millions of boys better themselves mentally, physically, and spiritually. Thousands of men and women volunteer and are involved in Scouts. I know many of the people in our chamber are. As a point of personal pride, I'm awfully proud of my son, Will, that many of you know, who is an Eagle Scout. And it just is with great pride and humility that I bring these young men before you today. Scouting has played a major role in the development of many of our great Americans that the names are so familiar to us, such as Martin Luther King Jr., George Bush, our president, Neil Armstrong, who walked on the moon, Bill Gates, and our very own right here from Georgia, Hank Aaron. It's an excellent, worthwhile program. It deserves our admiration and respect and our commendation, and that's why they're here today. We've also got a special treat. It's rare, folks, for a Scout to attain all of the merit badges that can be granted through the Boy Scout program. So it's really special when you're in the presence of one of those young men, but we've got two of them on the rostrum behind me. I want to introduce the folks that are here, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Trey Sprecher, who is going to talk to you just briefly. But also on the stage with me is Cutler Shiver, Steve Cummings Jr., Aaron Torrey, Tracy Technan, and T.J. Wells. So with that, Mr. Sprecher, if you would come and address us.
Hi, my name is Trey Sprecher, and I am an Eagle Scout with all 138 merit badges. And with these experiences, I can say with confidence that Boy Scouts has helped shape me into a better person that I am today, and that I have enjoyed every minute that I've spent in it. Thank you.
Good job.
We have some very important special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 201 by Senator Hill IV and others, a resolution commending the Georgia Rural Health Association and recognizing February 27, 2019 as Rural Health Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas the Georgia Rural Health Association is a nonprofit advocate for rural health care consumers and the dedicated healthcare professionals who serve rural Georgia and encourages the development of an improved healthcare system throughout this state. And whereas the Georgia Rural Health Association recognizes that the limited availability of quality rural health care facilities and services further aggravate the area's distressed economy and deter industry recruitment. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the efforts of the Georgia Rural Health Association and recognize February 27, 2019 as Rural Health Day at the State Capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon our senator from the 4th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, members of the Senate. Today is Rural Health Day, and we're honored to have the Georgia Rural Health Association visiting here at the Capitol today. This association is made up of providers, educators, leaders, legislators, and others who are vitally interested in rural health in Georgia. The Georgia Rural Health Association is the oldest rural health association in the United States, formed in 1981. You know, the state, and thanks to you all, is paying greater attention today to the health and the economy of rural Georgia, and certainly there's no more important part of helping the rural Georgia survive than health care, and this group is dedicated to that as well. One of the features that they've supported is the passage of the Rural Hospital Tax Credit Bill that our own Lieutenant Governor was the author of a couple of years ago, that has meant a tremendous amount to rural hospitals and rural health care around the state. With me on the floor today are several individuals. Carla Belcher, who's the CEO of Community Health Care Systems and treasurer of the association, Aaron Mundy, who's a board member, and John Butts, who's a board member. We want to present this resolution to Carla and ask her to step forward and speak to the resolution. Carla?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, good morning. I just wanted to take a couple of minutes just to thank the Senate this morning for supporting Rural Health Day today and the recognition and value of importance of health care of rural Georgians and the providers that serve them. A strong rural Georgia is vital to our local and state economies, and we appreciate your dedication and commitment to the preservation of rural Georgia and the infrastructure, and most importantly, rural Georgians. As a rural Georgian, I can honestly say that we value what you do for us, and we are very thankful for the support that you give us. So thank you today for recognizing Rural Health Day for Georgia. Thank you.
Just wanted to make a quick comment. Rural Healthcare Association and the providers in the rural areas do yeoman's work, making a little bit go a long, long way. But that little bit that they are provided, the resources they're provided, has increased over the last 5 or 6 years due to the works of this body, the governor, lieutenant governor, and the House. We are all agreed that this is an important area of focus, and I'm certainly appreciative of all the work that they do every day, and thanks to you for your support of this important issue. Thank you.
Will the Secretary read the resolution for our next set of special guests?
Senate Resolution 227 by Senator James of the 35th and others. A resolution recognizing February 27, 2019 as Lupus Advocacy Day at the State Capitol and for other purposes. Whereas lupus is an acute and chronic lifelong autoimmune disease in which the immune system is unbalanced, causing inflammation and tissue damage to virtually every organ system in the body. And whereas at least 1.5 million Americans, including approximately 55,000 Georgians, are currently living with lupus. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend the work of the Lupus Foundation of America and other organizations devoted to finding a cure for lupus and supporting the individuals and families whose lives are affected by this autoimmune disease, and recognize February 27, 2019 as Lupus Advocacy Day at the State Capitol. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 35th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's an exciting day because we have so many of our advocates and friends who are with us today. We are standing with my colleagues, with our superhero shiro capes on, and joined by many of the advocates and those who are victims of lupus. We have some of our leaders, Christopher Reed, Bella Rocherio, and Steve Evans, who's standing with us now. And as you know, for many years, I've had an opportunity to try to bring acknowledgement of this ailment by sponsoring Lupus Day. And it was Representative Kim Schofield who came to me over 10 years ago. And she was not a representative at the time. And she was fighting very hard. So she's over on the other side with a group of people. And we have many in the gallery. Can you please stand if you're here for Lupus Day? See all the purple? Thank you. We appreciate you being here and fighting and standing with my colleagues and I to do everything we can to bring awareness. At this time, Mr. Christopher Reed, will you come forward and just say a few words?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Duncan, Senator James, as well as Senator Unterman, for inviting us today to Lupus Advocacy Day, and thank you to all of you for appreciating this day. I am Chris Reed. I'm the co-chair of Lupus Advocacy for the Lupus Foundation of America Georgia chapter. So I'd welcome you on behalf of that group and our president, Steve Evans. I'm as well chair of the Georgia Council on Lupus Education and Awareness. So I thank you for the service you've given to that organization as well. I met Bella Rocchio 3 years ago at a little party in preparation for the Walk to End Lupus. And I was amazed by her presence, amazed by the way she articulated herself, and the amount of work that she's done to improve advocacy on lupus as well as raise funds. She's 14 now. She's a student at North Atlanta High School, and she's now raised over $33,000 for lupus. So at this time, I'd like to give her the stage. I want to welcome Bella Rocchio.
Thank you, Chris. Life is precious. That's what I began to understand when my mom got sick. Every second of every day is a gift, because you don't know when it could all come to an end. Lupus makes it that way. My mom got sick when I was 6, and my life has been filled with her hospital stays, doctor's visits, and weekly trips to the pharmacy. Years of lupus has caused me to become fearful of the future. Could today be the day Mom goes to the hospital again? Sometimes I think about it all and blink. This is really my family's normal? It shouldn't be, and it won't be. When I started fundraising in 5th grade, I made myself a promise that I intend to keep. I told myself that I will not stop until there was a cure for lupus. 4 years and $33,000 later, I'm still fighting, and I will not stop until we solve this cruel mystery of lupus. Thank you, Georgia Senators, and go Team Bella Vita.
Thank you, Mr. President, and all of the senators. I'd like to present the resolution to the president of the Lupus Foundation. Thank you. We're honored to have you here today, and we will, all of these heroes will fight with you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's terrific to be here. We've got a big group here, and we appreciate your support. Thanks so much.
Okay, you're welcome. Here you go. Here you go. Hey.
Here you go. Here's your.
Want to play for a picture?
I figured you would.
Figure out how it's gonna move.
Mr. Secretary, will you read the resolution for our next set of special guests?
Senate Resolution 262 by Senators Harbin the 16th and others, a resolution welcoming Mr. Pavel Shidlovsky to the state capitol and for other purposes, whereas Mr. Pavel Shidlovsky is the ambassador of Belarus to the United States to facilitate trust and friendship between our two countries, and whereas he has come from Europe to visit our great state of Georgia as a special and honored guest, and whereas Belarus is a trading partner of the state of Georgia, with which we have a commercial relationship beneficial to both our peoples, now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body do welcome Mr. Pavel Shidlovsky to the great state of Georgia. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 16th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you. In September of 2018, my wife and I had the privilege of spending 10 days in Belarus. It is a phenomenal country that is growing, where there is liberty, there is freedom, and there's a change going on there that is absolutely neat. And during that time, we had a great time to meet, and the ambassador is with us today. Also, some other friends, Andrew and Ina Rishkroff, who are with the Belarusian ministries, have been great friends. and we have really enjoyed getting to know them and finding out what we really have in common and the liberties and the freedoms that we have. And I want to present today the resolution to the ambassador there, and then we're going to have you can say a few words. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. President, dear Senator Harbin, senators, I'm deeply humbled by the opportunity to speak before you in the Senate of the great state of Georgia. I represent a country, Belarus, in the middle of Europe. Our country treats no other nation as its adversary. Vice versa, we treat all countries in the world, our neighbors, the United States, as our friends, and we want to develop good and friendly relations with every country in the world. My being here has become possible against the background of improved political relations between my country, Belarus, and the United States. It has also become possible thanks to the good commercial, people-to-people, religious, humanitarian contacts between Belarus and the state of Georgia. And it is also possible thanks to the great humanitarian effort by Senator Harbin and by the Belarusian ministry here in Atlanta area. I really would like to have better relationship between Belarus and United States, between Belarus and the state of Georgia. I would like to make sure that the connections that we make in this state benefit for the people of both Belarus and Georgia. I would like to invite you to visit my beautiful country, and I would like to have this cooperation continue and have more visits and more good relations and results of this cooperation. You're welcome to visit my country, and thank you for your attention.
Mr. Secretary, will you read the resolution for our next set of special guests?
Senate Resolution 93 by Senator Jones of the 25th, a resolution recognizing February 27, 2019 as Jackson-Bucks County Day at the state capitol for other purposes. Whereas Jackson-Bucks County is one of several bedroom communities for the metropolitan Atlanta and Macon areas, and whereas cities and counties that support great economic growth for the state and have such rich history and traditions are worthy of recognition by this body. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize February 27, 2019 as Jackson-Bucks County Day at the state capitol and express their most sincere best wishes for continued growth and success. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon our senator from the 25th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members of the Senate. I'd just like to rise today to welcome my citizens from Jackson-Bucks County. They're in the balcony here. Can we give them a big round of applause? Thank you. This is our 7th annual Jackson-Bucks County Day, and we're just here today to thank this body, as particularly our Appropriations Chair from the 4th, who helped us in orchestrating and facilitating our brand new conference center that opened earlier this year in the oldest state park in the nation, in Indian Springs State Park. We take a lot of pride in our natural resources there in Bucks County. And we also take a lot of pride that we've become a center of the movie industry, where a number of hits like Stranger Things and Zombieland and other Netflix hits that are being played, being filmed in our hometown. It's a small hometown with a lot of personality, and to segue into a lot of personality, I'd like to introduce our mayor of our fine city, Ms. Kay Pippin, to accept this resolution.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Well, Senator Jones has taken away my thunder. Those are the things that I would have highlighted for our community. But there are 50 of us here today from this small community, And basically, we're here to say thank you. Thank you for caring enough about the state of Georgia to offer yourself for public service. We appreciate everything each and every one of you do. We have been the direct beneficiaries of your leadership for a long time, most recently being the opening of the Idlewild Conference Center. It is a beautiful facility. You can add it to the one at Unicoi, the one at Lake Blackshear, and a couple of others around up on in Hiwassee. And we invite you to come see it, host a meeting there, host a party there. It's right over the water. It's beautiful, and we thank you for everything you did to help us make that take place. And as the senator said, come down and go boating or jet skiing or swimming on Jackson Lake, or visit the oldest state park in America that you help us to keep going all the time, which is where the Idlewild Center is placed at Indian Springs. And I want to tell you about my own city, the city of Jackson. We're proud of the fact that for the last several years, we have ranked among the 25 top safest cities out of near 600 in the state of Georgia. So we are a clean, green, and safe community, and we invite you all to come down and check us out. In the bags that we provided for you today is a postcard that allows you to bring yourself and a guest and enjoy the nationally famous Fresh Air Barbecue. And we hope you'll take us up on that. And when you do, come through town, stop by and see me. If you get a traffic ticket, just come to the mayor's office, bring your ticket, and I'll take you to where you pay it. So, not a problem. I want to introduce to you the folks with me up here today. Hello, Lieutenant Governor. Thank you. And again, thank you to all of you that are new to these positions. And I can tell you that we look forward to working hand in glove with you for good government. Thank you for serving. We appreciate it. My friend Joe Westbury on the end, a local businessman, and he is head of the organization, one of the two that's orchestrated this event here today, Partners for Smart Growth in Jackson. And the gentleman here is Ken Rivers. He, too, is a businessman, but he is chairman of the Butts County Board of Commissioners. And, of course, you know Senator Jones, and I always have to share with you the fact that I've actually diapered that senator. It wasn't last week, as somebody else suggested, but many years ago, okay? And Russ Crumley, who is the immediate past chairman of the Butts County Board of Commissioners and currently serving, and Matt Garrison, who is representing Sheriff Gary Long and our sheriff's office. Thank you for serving. Y'all come see us in Jackson and Butts County. Thank you.
I can't believe, great job. I can't believe you introduced her about personality. I can't tell that she's got it. For what purpose does the senator from the 7th rise?
Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow a committee report to be read.
Is there objection to asking for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended for a committee report to be read? Hearing none. Mr. Secretary, will you read the report?
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment has had under consideration the following legislation, instructing more of the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 182 do pass by substitute. Submitted by Senator Harper the 7th. That concludes the order.
Points personal. This time, does any senator wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 6th. Senator from the 6th. Chair recognizes the senator from the 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think most of you have figured out by now that this is Boy Scout Day at the Capitol. And I just wanted to let you know that my husband's an Eagle Scout, my son's an Eagle Scout, my daughter's a Venture Scout, and so we are definitely a scouting family. And so I know a lot of you are involved with scouting, but you may not know what a big deal it is that we had 2 boys here today who have gotten every single merit badge in their quest to become an Eagle Scout. Trey Sprecher and Cutler Shiver, both of them have earned all 138 possible merit badges, and that's a lot of work, not just for the Scouts, but for the moms and dads. So these are future leaders, and I just wanted to be sure that you all know what a big deal it is that we've got Scouts up there that have gotten all those merit badges, and I think there's some Scouts up there who are working towards getting all the merit badges. So all the Scouts in the gallery, please stand up. Let us recognize you. Thank you. I yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 30th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to recognize the Carroll County Chamber up there. I see y'all in the stands up there. I want to thank y'all for being here today. I want to thank you for the contributions you make not only to Carroll County, but our whole western part of the state. So thank y'all for y'all stand up, please, so we can see who y'all. Y'all join me in welcoming the Carroll County Chamber. Thank y'all.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was also Cub Scout and a Boy Scout, so I know the work that's put in to make such an achievement come to life. But today's the 27th, and I wanted to just give you a Black history fact. I wanted to talk about Mahalia Jackson. Mahalia Jackson was referred to as the Queen of Gospel, and her voice inspired countless vocalists in her genre and beyond. Mahalia Jackson was born October 26, 1911, in New Orleans, Louisiana. She began singing at the age of 4 at Mount Moriah Baptist Church. As a teenager, she moved to Chicago to study nursing and attended the Greater Salem Baptist Church. Her singing voice led to an invite to the church choir, and she then joined the Johnson Gospel Singers. Now singing professionally, Jackson added an I to her name and began cutting records in the 1930s with some mild success. It wasn't until 1947 that Jackson hit big with the song Move On Up a Little Higher, which is said to be the highest selling gospel song of all time. The song was also added to the Library of Congress National Recordings Registry in 2005. In the 1950s and beyond, Jackson became an international star and sang at President John F. Kennedy inauguration. She then moved to being a prominent supporter of the Civil Rights Movement, performing at the 1963 March on Washington and also singing at the Reverend Martin Luther King's Jr. funeral. I would belt out a round of Move It Up a Little Higher, but the light has just turned red, so I gotta go.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you see, and as you've seen earlier today, we had the privilege to recognize Lupus Advocacy Day. Lupus is a chronic autoimmune disease that affects approximately 5 million people around the world. 1.5 million Americans have a form of lupus. 16,000 new cases of lupus are reported each year. The disease strikes mostly women of childbearing age. Lupus is 2 to 3 times more prevalent among women of color than among Caucasian women. Approximately 1 in 537 young African American women are affected. Today, I'd like to thank the Lupus Foundation of America for coming to the Capitol to advocate for their worthy cause. I am grateful to them for educating us as legislators, raising awareness in their communities, and offering hope to millions of lupus patients who are counting on them. I also want to recognize my colleague in the House, Representative Kimberly Schofield, who I had the honor and privilege to campaign with this last year and got to know, and she informed me of lupus and really made me aware of that chronic autoimmune disease. Let's continue to raise awareness about lupus and educate ourselves on the issues. Let's also make sure to make health care more affordable and accessible for all Georgians. Let's invest in research. We cannot tire and we cannot quit. The well-being of at least 1.5 million Americans is at stake. Thank you so much. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. The chair recognizes the senator from the 17th.
Thank you, Mr. President. You know, every year we have the adult leadership class from Henry County come up here, and every single year they say this is the best class ever. I have to say the class 2019 is the best class ever. My wife is actually in that class as well. Some of them are up in the gallery today, so if y'all please stand and be recognized. Welcome to your upper chamber.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 3rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. On your desk is the 2018 progress report for Jekyll Island. And if you'll take a minute to look at it, you'll see that really great things are happening there. Last year we saw a 7% increase in visitors. We had 3.7 million people coming to visit Jekyll Island. That's over the last 5 years, that represents another 28% in growth. And these good things are a direct result of the investment which the state of Georgia has made in the facilities there, as well as the public-private partnerships that the state is that the authority has entered into with our hotels and other restaurants and other service providers there on Jekyll Island. So we're very grateful for what the state has done in our area with this state park. And I want to invite each of you to come down there when the session is over and spend a week on Jekyll Island. You'll really enjoy it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 25th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to bring a little sad news to this body. Longtime legislator and colleague of ours, Mickey Chanel from Greensboro, Georgia, passed away yesterday. Mickey served for several decades in the House of Representatives and was a good friend and a good mentor for when I first got elected. In fact, I always like to tell the story that when I first was elected, you know, we always have these functions that you have to go to as legislators, and a lot of times they're at night, and you know, and it takes time away from your family. And I never will forget on a chamber, eggs, and some sort of event one night, I wasn't going to be able to make it because my little girl had a ball game, had a soccer game, and I called Mickey and said, Mickey, just wanted to let you know I'm not going to be able to make it tonight. I'm sorry, and I was all apologetic and everything. And Mickey, at that point in time, gave me the best advice I think I've ever received. I've never forgotten it. He said, you don't worry about that. He said, you go do that with your family. He said, I've got daughters myself, and while I can't tell you every one of these events that I've been to or every one that I've missed, my daughters can tell me every one of their ball games that I've missed of theirs. That was knowledge and wisdom that has always stuck with me. And Mickey did a lot of great things for Greene County and the Lake Oconee area, and he will be missed. And Mr. President, at this time, if you would just allow us to take a moment of silence to a great Georgian and Mickey Chanel.
Senator, to ask for a moment of silence, please rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise to recognize a national sorority, Sigma Gamma Rho. It's national sorority. Some members are in the stand today. Will you please rise? Sigma Gamma Rho is a national sorority all across our nation, recognizing, doing mentoring programs and community service, all college graduates, doing wonderful things for our state and for our nation. Ladies of Sigma Gamma Rho, we thank you and we welcome you to your state capitol. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 36th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, like many of you, I just learned that we've lost Mickey Chanel. The remarks that you just heard from the senator from the 25th, lifting up Mickey's service. I wanted to add a few remarks of my own. I had the privilege I was in the House when Mickey was elected and came to serve in the House, and enjoyed many years of serving with him on the Health Committee and Health Policy. And he would have been at the right hand of the governor were he in good health and here among us on crafting Medicaid solutions. He was a very smart man, very approachable, very affable, very social, incredibly smart and diligent and hardworking. He is somebody who came to the legislature to make a difference after a lifetime as a successful businessman over in Greene County and Greensboro. And Zell Miller was his baseball coach up at Young Harris. And we should not fail to remember Mickey Chanel was the architect of Peach Care for Kids. Countless Georgia families have benefited from that incredible program. And Mickey was the person who got sent down to Governor Miller's office to break the news to him that the legislature was going to do it a little bit different than what the governor had proposed. And he said he said he got treated like a junkyard dog down there in that conversation because he was tweaking the governor's legislation. But you know what? We got a program because of Mickey Chanel's leadership that withstood the test of time, that delivered for millions of Georgians, there's no question. It's a model program, and it was an early precursor long ago that Georgia got in the front lines of doing it right for our children when they federally took the policy to provide health care coverage for children, for needy children. And Mickey made up his mind to master the Medicaid system. We heard that all that debate we had yesterday on Medicaid. It's not it's a complex system, understanding and digging down and knowing all the way the money flows and the money goes and what policies should be in place and what should be discarded. He traveled all over the state of Georgia along with his faithful sidekick, Butch Parrish, and he mastered Medicaid. And he was the go-to expert in Georgia and in our ranks. And there are people here like Chairman Hill that can attest to that. His service to the state of Georgia is, I would say, just beyond measure. And I weep today for his family, his friends, and I stand to honor the incredible contributions that this man made to health policy in Georgia. He will be greatly missed, as the senator from the 25th has indicated. Thank you. I yield the well.
Thank you for those comments. Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Someone just saw the cape and they said, let me see you jump down from somewhere so you can fly or run around this chamber so we can see the cape flapping. And I learned a long time ago when I was about 5 years old that even though my mother called me Angel, I couldn't fly. My 2-year-old sister got on top of the bunk bed and she decided that she was Supergirl, and she broke her arm, and we had to take care of her for a long time. So, no, I can't fly, and I don't even advocate that I can fly, but I can work hard for all of us. And some of my sisters who taught me how hard to work here in this legislature was former Representative Roberta Abdul Salam, and she's now on the MARTA board. And then Brenda Davenport, who I've been working with for over 25 years with SCLC and many other groups. And she's like I'm a former teacher. She's still currently a teacher of elementary school. Anyway, my colleague got up and recognized them, and I was supposed to recognize them with Sigma Gamma Rho. So are you still here, Sigma Gamma Rho? Let's see. Hey, we're going to give you another warm welcome and you have so many great leaders, and Brenda's right up there, and a lot of you. So take care. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the well. We welcome you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th. Oh. He waves off. Chair recognizes the senator from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President. As a Black History Month come almost to an end, I'd like to shed light on Ella Baker, a phenomenal, brilliant woman who played a key role in some of the most influential organizations of the time, including the NAACP, Dr. Martin Luther King's Junior Southern Leadership Conference, and the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. There would not have been an SNCC without the leadership of Ella Baker. With her guidance and encouragement, the organization became one of the leading advocates of human rights in the country. SNCC strengthened its effort, community organization, and supported freedom rights in 1961, along with the March on Washington in 1963, and fought the Civil Rights Acts of 1964. Ella Baker dedicated 50 years of her life fighting for equal and fair treatment of African Americans. Until her death in 1986, she continued to be influential leaders in the fight for human and civil rights. Ella Baker's courageous action paved the way for future generations. We must honor Ella Baker's legacy by always making sure we lead with solutions and drive people to imagine new possibilities. Like Ms. Baker, we must spark change by strengthening our communities and shaping the future for our children and our children's children. Thank you. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 14th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Today, I'd like to just have a little conversation between me and you. You see, we work on legislation all year, and we use the premise it's for the children. And honestly, that's good, because we're told in the Bible that we should be the voice for those that can't be heard. Whether we're working on legislation for I can't even say it, dyslexia, or with autism, or any of the other things. Today in the Capitol, I have Bartow Youth Leadership and some of the other groups around that are youth leadership. So we pour our hearts into these youth. In Bartow County, I have a little program that we started for cybersecurity, and we targeted the 20% in that school that's really struggling. We targeted ones that don't have a voice, those that are maybe forgotten, never been chosen in their life. And we're pouring into these youth. The report I just got stated that for the first time they have a class, 100% attendance. For the first time they've seen young people that were on the verge of being removed out of their classes because of disruption or their grades, straight A's. Why? Because we took the time to invest in them. Now you may be asking, where am I going with this? I'm going with this because here we are faced with casinos and horse racing and gambling. And we keep saying it's for the kids. We say it's for the children. We say it's to prop up hope. You know, the interesting thing is we talked about this before. When hope was brought forward, constitutionally, we were going to designate a certain amount of the proceeds from the lottery to go to hope. And yet we've lied. We haven't done that. We haven't even gotten close to that. And yet we want to bring another program to support it. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the effects, it's not just the casinos or where they're at, it's the neighborhoods next to them. You see, the most recent report that came out said within 50 miles of a casino in the neighboring counties and cities, it doubles the chances of problem gamblers and the ill wills on these families. So have we forgotten about those counties and those cities? Do we not care about them? They get no economic lift. Ladies and gentlemen, we're better than this. And as I said yesterday, it doesn't affect Republicans or Democrats, black or white or Hispanic. These criminals with human trafficking are going after every one of our children. And we have to be the voice for them. And with that, I yield the well.
For what purpose does the senator from the 29th rise?
Mr. President, I rise to ask for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow a bill to be read.
Will the secretary read the bill? Is there objection? Hearing none, will the secretary read the bill?
Senate Bill 208 by Senator Robertson, the 29th, and others, a bill entitled Enactment Article 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 40 of the OCGA, relating to cancellation, suspension, and revocation of licenses so as to revise the implied consent notices and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair signs the bill to public safety. You have a consent calendar privilege resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to the bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea, opposed nay, and the secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. The bills on the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. For what purpose does the majority leader rise?
It's consent that Senate Bill 65 be engrossed.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent that Senate Bill 65 be engrossed. Is there objection? Objection. Would the majority leader like to speak to his motion?
Mr. President.
Would any additional senator like to speak to the motion? All those in favor of the motion will rise, stand, and be counted. The motion is to engross. Reverse. On the motion, the yeas are 29, the nays are 18. The motion has prevailed, and Senate Bill 65 is engrossed. We're now moving on to the rules calendar. Will the Secretary read Senate Bill 65?
Senate Bill 65 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, a bill to title and act amend Chapter 5C of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to alternative ad valorem tax on motor vehicles, so as to provide that the transfer of a title between legal entities owned by the same person does not constitute a taxable event. For other purposes, Mr. President, Senate Committee on Finance offers the following substitute: Senate Bill 65, a bill to title and act amend Chapter 5C of Title 40 of the OCGA relating to alternative ad valorem tax on motor vehicles, so as to provide that the transfer of a title from one legal entity in which an individual holds an ownership interest of at least 50% to another legal entity in which the same individual holds an ownership interest of at least 50% does not constitute a taxable event, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 7th to speak to Senate Bill 65.
Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate Bill 65 simply does one thing. If you have paid your TAVT on a vehicle and you are the owner of the entity that paid such TAVT and you want to transfer title from one entity to another that you are at least 50% owner of, you do not have to pay the TAVT again. If there are no questions, Mr. President, I will yield the will.
You have a question. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
In terms of this bill, does a wholesaler currently pay a TAVT when it transfers a vehicle to a dealer?
Does a wholesaler,
A wholesaler of cars, of vehicles.
do they pay a TAVT when they sell the car to a dealer?
Yeah.
To my knowledge, no.
So, for example, well, let's take a hypothetical car dealer. Let's say Big Ash Motors in Osceola. And so if Big Ash gets a trade-in.
It's actually Bad Ash.
Well, it's hypothetical.
I was just making sure.
If they get a trade-in of a used vehicle, take it to auction, but then at the auction it's not going great, right? So then they have their own LLC, then buy it for underpriced, then they take a loss on it, and then they sell it back on their lot. If at any point, did they pay a TAVT?
If the TAVT has not been paid on that vehicle, then the TAVT must be paid.
Does this bill affect that at all?
If the TAVT had not been paid on the vehicle, regardless of who the entity is and who the entity buying is, or who the entity transferred to is, the TAVT must be paid.
Will the senator yield?
I'll yield.
And I'm just trying to get some clarification. You say the TAVT must be paid
Yes, if it has not already previously been paid.
currently under the law.
No, under this.
Under this as well.
Yes.
Okay, that's my
Yep.
question.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Will the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you please share why this bill is necessary?
It actually come from a constituent of mine, and I didn't share that story. I try to be brief in the will to explain the bills, but to go through the entirety of the issue, I had a constituent of mine reach out to me last summer who owns multiple businesses, and he was trying to transfer title of one of his vehicles to another entity of his, and it was his understanding that he didn't have to pay the TAVT to do that. I was under the understanding that I thought that was the case too, but when we made adjustments to the law last year, it was only from the owner of a company to a company and not from a company to a company that the same owner owns. So this is an attempt to address the issue that my constituent raised to me last year, and that's where it comes from.
Does the senator yield?
I yield.
So, just so I'm clear, what you're saying is when the TATV has been paid on that vehicle,
Yep.
as long as it's moving between entities owned by a person with 50% or more interest, they don't have to pay it again, correct?
That's correct.
And you further yield?
I yield.
And if it hasn't been paid, the TAVT, then it will be paid. You're not evading taxes,
I'll
correct?
give you a for instance. So
Yes, sir.
nonprofits do not have to pay a TAVT. And this is a completely hypothetical as well. So if a nonprofit entity is owned, has 50% share in that entity, and they transfer title of a vehicle from a nonprofit that they have 50% share in to an entity that is for profit that they have 50% share in, they would then have to pay the TAVT still. So if, in other words, if that vehicle has not been subject to TAVT at any point, regardless of who the transferring entities are, it will have to be paid. So this would only impact those that TAVT had already been paid.
Okay. Does the Senator further yield?
I yield.
So are you contending there's no financial impact to this bill?
The financial impact is very nominal, very small.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank
you. You have no more questions. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 15?
Senate Bill 15 by Senator Albers of the 56th and others. A bill will be titled Enactment Article 27 to Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to loitering at or disrupting schools so as to require public and private schools to have performed certain threat assessments to amend Article 9 of Chapter 3, Title 35 of the OCGA relating to Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center, those to provide for the center's role in preventing, discovering, responding to, and recovering from threats, warnings, and developing situations regarding any public or private school and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety offers the following substitute Senate Bill 15. A bill will be titled Enact to amend Article 27, Chapter 2, Title 20 of the OCGA relating to loitering at or disrupting schools. So as require public schools to have performed certain site threat assessments, provide for definition, to require every public school to prepare a school safety plan and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize a senator from the 56th to speak to Senate Bill 15.
Thank you, Mr. President. I cannot imagine a topic that is more important than protecting our children in schools. My sons attended Fulton County schools. In fact, my younger son is a junior at Roswell High School. I am humbled to present this bill today, the Keeping Georgia Schools Safe Act, Senate Bill 15, as both your colleague as well as a father. This began last year at Senate Resolution 935, where we created a Senate Study Committee on school safety. And I want to take a moment and thank the senators from the 34th, the 53rd, the 33rd, the 32nd, the 14th, the 1st, the 9th, and former Senator Fran Miller for their incredible amount of work and time taken as we traveled all around our great state, north, south, east, and west, urban, rural, and suburban. At each location, we listened to students, to teachers, parents, school administrators, law enforcement, firefighters, and EMS. We heard from subject matter experts from within our state, at the federal level, and private industry. We were very impressed with the great work currently being done by our school systems, our first responders, and state agencies, and they deserve to be commended. We also asked for input from all Georgians who were unable to attend some of those meetings. We put up a website, GA-Senate-K12safety.com, where you can review every presentation. You can see videos of each one of those meetings, as well as there was an area for comment, and we received hundreds of comments from our citizens and took those into account. The recommendations became a report, and that report was turned to action with this bill that is in front of you today, as well as through the appropriations process. This has been broken down into 3 different areas: prevention, physical security, and response. Prevention being the most important. Our goal is to identify a problem before it happens. Wrap our arms around these young folks before they go down a dark path and keep them on a great trajectory. The next is the physical security of all of the school grounds. And last but not least, if there is an emergency, to have the proper response and training in place. I'd like to thank Governor Kemp for his unwavering commitment and leadership to this issue. It has been extraordinary. I also want to thank our Lieutenant Governor for his incredible support and passion to protect our schools, and the members of the Senate and staff who worked countless hours over this last year, and the work done and support from the GBI, from the Sheriff's Association, from the Police Chiefs Association, from GEMA, the Department of Education, and all of our local school systems. This is a true team effort with bipartisan work, and it's just the beginning. There is more work that will continue. Let me review this bill in some detail, beginning on page 2. Each school will have an external site threat assessment completed by the Georgia Emergency Management and Homeland Security Agency, also known as GEMA, or a group that they approve at no cost to the school. This will happen on a 4-year cycle to assure there is ongoing review and any steps for remediation had taken place. Each school will then update a school safety plan, which will be submitted to the Georgia Department of Education, as well as their local law enforcement. This will include all aspects of training, including the entire school campus and safety zones, making sure we're looking at things such as off-hours events, outside functions, buses, and transportation. Drills are to be conducted annually based on these plans and site assessments. Either the principal or her or his designee will be a school safety coordinator in each and every school. Their role is to coordinate with local law enforcement, the GBI, Department of Education, to report any reasonable suspicion of criminal or threatening activity. What we learned is we have to connect the dots. It's so important. I spoke to parents from Parkland, Florida, and other areas of the country. In fact, just 2 weeks ago, and the one dad told me, had they just connected the dots, we could have prevented this. We are going to learn from others and make sure we connect those dots. On page 5, this directs the Department of Education to work with all state and local governments to help develop best practices and then authorize them to apply for grants relating to school safety. This bill also creates something called the School Safety Coach. These are utilizing our heroes, and who better? Our veterans, those currently serving in the National Guard or the Reserves, police, fire, EMS, those who have been trained all their lives of how to react in emergency, but also can be a tremendous role model for those students. Both GEMA and the Department of Education will develop a training and certification process, so schools will have the opportunity to. They do not need to choose to do this, but it gives them one more tool in their toolkit where they can offer positions full-time, part-time, and volunteer in order to fulfill what they believe is the best solution for their school and school district. Some areas cannot afford a safety resource officer or their own school police force, and we are unfortunately at a time where we're struggling to fill law enforcement positions, so we hope this will give an extra opportunity. The Georgia Information Sharing and Analysis Center, or what we call GSAC, will maintain a smartphone application that most of us know as the See Something, Send Something app. We didn't name the app specifically because no, over time technology will change, but the need will not. In addition, we added $350,000 from the Senate into the amended budget so that application could be made anonymous so we knew the students would use it, as well as make sure it's scalable to go out to 181 school systems and all corners of our state. This is very important and has been used successfully already in Georgia, but also very successfully in other states. And then lastly, giving the GBI the authority they need to in order to receive this information and intelligence, investigate, working with local law enforcement officers, and when necessary, further pursue that through the courts and criminal justice system. This concludes the main part of this bill. This is an important step forward for all of us. I'm proud of the work with the Keeping Georgia Schools Safe Act. Mr. President, I'll yield for questions. If there are no questions, I will yield the will.
You have a question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Chairman Yield.
Yes, sir.
First off, Senator, thank you for the outstanding committee meetings that you had all across Georgia, and also our colleagues for the bipartisan support in mandating that. Isn't it true that you had countless people testifying from law enforcement, mental health, development disabilities, and teachers and school systems and others that helped us guide our way through this journey?
Yes, Senator, and thank you for bringing that up. It was a great set of meetings where we were trying to include everyone and anyone who would be a positive stakeholder.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes.
Is there a fiscal note associated with this bill at all?
There is not a fiscal note associated with this bill.
Okay. Do you have any understanding of the cost associated with the bill?
Yes. If you look at the part for GSAC, for See Something, Send Something, that has already been put into the amended budget, the $350,000, and then GMA has in the full budget additional dollars for what they'll be doing. However, we also believe that through them leveraging best practices and applying for grants, they will be able to also bring in a lot of federal dollars and other potential provisions that we do not access today.
Will the senator yield?
Yes.
But in terms of understanding the actual cost or impact, we don't have any numbers with respect to that?
We do have those numbers, Senator. As I just mentioned, we had the part for the GBI, and we have the part for GMA that are already built into this.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
One of the things you indicated was that the site threat assessments would be done for all the schools with no cost to them. Did I hear that correctly?
You did.
Okay. How is that going to happen?
Through GMA. GMA today conducts these assessments all over the state of Georgia. Knowing that they will be doing it more broadly than they're doing it today, we gave them authorization in this bill to utilize other third parties that they would train and certify in order to make sure we'd be able to get all the schools within the state.
Would the senator yield?
I yield.
With respect to that, that was section B1 of the bill, and it's on line 31. And we talk about the training and approval of private individuals and entities to actually do the site threat assessments. Is that correct?
That is correct. Again, when GMA does not have all of the ability themselves to do that, it allows them in order to contract out and have more folks to help them in their time of need.
Will the senator yield?
I yield.
With respect to that, the way that I've read the bill, it is not that necessarily GMA would contract out to these folks, but that they could be hired by the school systems to conduct the site threat assessments. Is that not an accurate reading of the bill?
They will be working with GMA to do that. GMA is going to be the main point because they will certify the process and make sure that the third party is coming through them first.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
With respect to that, who pays these third parties?
That will come through GMA.
Okay. Where in the bill does it say that?
Today, Senator, while I look this up, GMA provides this at no cost to our schools. This is something that's been in place for many years. It's just in the bill now. We are requiring it to be done. Some schools have had this done in the past internally. However, we believe that anybody who has an audit or something done should have that done from an outside party. And this way that there is no confusion where one could have tunnel vision if they're doing it upon themselves. But I'll have to look into it specifically. But again, it's already provided by GMA today.
And will the senator yield?
I will yield.
So my concern is that this is an unfunded mandate that we're going to put the onus on the schools to actually pay these private providers to do these site threat assessments if GMA is not available to do so.
Senator, I appreciate your comments, but I don't believe they're backed up by what is happening. Today, again, GMA is providing and is doing a great job all over the state providing these to folks today. So it is incumbent upon the school to schedule a time to have that done, and then every 4 years to get that done. And I can't think of any reason why people won't work together to make that happen. But I do not see that as an unfunded liability at all.
Will the senator yield?
I yield.
In terms of all of the hearings you had all over the state, and there were many, I'll say that, were the issues of guns and school safety ever addressed at any of these hearings?
Senator, we had folks comment all over the state, but the focus of this bill is specifically to school safety in the areas that I mentioned, which was prevention, and then moving into what could be a response and or physical security.
Will the senator yield?
I yield.
And when we talk about prevention, what we're talking about is the prevention of mass shootings at schools, correct?
Actually, Senator, we're talking about a lot of things, and I appreciate your comments, but unfortunately, suicide rate has gone up extraordinary, and our goal is to make sure that a student never goes down a dark path to harm themselves nor others, and it could be a variety of issues. We are most concerned with threats that are happening now all over the world, and we had to look at things such as people driving through parking lots and through roads, which has been done. So this is a much larger issue than any one specific act. And we look at a holistic approach to make sure we're protecting our schools, our students, and all those who walk into those schools.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
And with respect to a holistic approach that doesn't actually look at and or talk about guns and the role they play with respect to school safety at all, correct?
Senator, I'll repeat myself one more time. The goal of the committee was to look at school safety in general, not one specific topic. This team worked together very closely, a bipartisan group, met with all the folks we talked about, and we came up with great recommendations to move forward.
Will the senator yield?
I will yield.
With respect to the site threat assessments done by a third party, how much would those cost?
It depends on the school, the size, and the location. I can't give you an estimate while I stand here today in the well.
Can you give me a range?
I did not come prepared with a range, Senator. No, I did not.
And without a fiscal note either, correct? Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 13th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I yield. Thank you.
Isn't it true that the first meeting your committee had was down in Senate District 13 at Lee County?
We had a wonderful meeting down in Lee County, Senator. Thank you.
I appreciate you going all over the state, as was pointed out, and hearing concerns from rural Georgia and urban Georgia and so forth. Is there a price too high that we can put on school safety, Senator?
I can't imagine there's a price too high for school safety, Senator. Thank you.
Would you further say, Senator, that this bill is really more proactive about preventing problems at school than it is reactive to, as it is often when we do have tragic situations happen, as was pointed out earlier?
Well, Senator, I would have to agree with you completely. Being proactive is the whole key in prevention. And, I failed to mention that by previous questions, the governor of our state, who committed to and we approved funding the $30,000 per school in order to help them out with all sorts of things, but unique to their school system because they know it's best for their school.
Thank you, Senator. I have one more question if you'll continue to yield.
Please.
The APEX program, we're putting more mental health counselors into school, and again, that's more of a proactive stance, and that's something that the governor is supporting, and your committee supports those type measures as well.
Absolutely, Senator. The mental health aspect is so important, and thank you for your leadership on that as well.
Thank you so much, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 45th.
Will the chairman yield?
Yes, Chairwoman.
Senator, isn't it true that those of us that have been around here a long time, that it's pretty remarkable that you broke through the bureaucracy and you were able to have these study committees and actually get money in the budget, in the amended budget? Can you just tell us a little bit about that time frame and how it expeditiously got handled?
Yes, thank you, Senator. In working with our governor and our lieutenant governor and appropriations, we made this a top priority. And with that, we were able to work with the amended budget to find the funds immediately for See Something, Send Something, as well as the additional initiatives for each school. And then going forward, again, as I mentioned, this is just the beginning, and I know that we're committed here as a body to continue to focus on that because it is one of our most important priorities here, and I look forward to continuing the great work with you as well.
Would you further yield?
I yield.
Is it not true that because our state is so diverse and we have school systems like Gwinnett County that has over 180,000 kids in the school system, that it was very difficult to go to places like Lee County and compare those two, and that some school systems may be much more far advanced and taking care of that with their own tax digest? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and we heard from Gwinnett County, our largest school system, which does a phenomenal job, but what we learned is one size does not fit all. And as we went through that process, we realized we needed to give them the right tools and the right opportunity in order to fulfill what works best in their community. And knowing that each one is unique, and it's not even just urban, rural, and suburban, it's different areas of the state. And that's why we work together with this bill to build a coalition of ideas and people to bring us to where we are today.
Would you further yield?
I yield.
Would you not say that psychotherapy, early intervention, talking to these kids at a very early age, and this prevention program that the governor has started is the key to the success of this total program?
Senator, I couldn't agree more. The great work by you, the governor, and so many other people of doing that early intervention, again, is the most important part of prevention. Thank you for those questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st, the minority leader.
Member yield, would the senator yield?
Yes, sir.
Just in your questions earlier, it came up with the third-party audit. So these audits will be required, correct?
Every 4 years, yes, Senator.
And is the infrastructure, I was worried, since this is a new requirement, is the infrastructure in place? Are there a lot of companies that do this kind of audit?
Senator, today GMA does these audits, and in talking to them, knowing that they would have to scale quickly at certain times to do that, we needed to give them the flexibility to use some outside resources to do that. That could be other law enforcement agencies, it could be a third party, it could be somebody who's got a background, but there are folks that go around and do all sorts of threat assessments today. They do them at large venues, at concerts, and schools today. So it's really giving the flexibility to make sure we can attack all of those at one time.
So there are companies right now that do this that are already in place?
There are companies that do that. I'm not sure which one of them is currently contract with GMA.
Did they present to you, and did you talk to them about the scale and whether or not we'd be able to ramp up in time to meet the implementation of your bill?
Absolutely. GMA has been a tremendous partner in all this. Commissioner Bryson and his team have been with us all along, walking in lockstep, and they were instrumental in the creation of the language for the bill as well.
Did those private companies, did they ever acquire a lobbyist or advocate so that you could get information on, who they are, what they are, how they do their business to make sure that they were, held to a high standard. Do they have lobbyist representation on their behalf?
I am not aware of any representation, Senator. However, I know that our state agencies, in all forms, will utilize outside assistance at certain times, and I'm confident they'll go through the right process and to get that done.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, Senator.
First off, to the chairman on public safety, I want to say thank you. And isn't it true that you spent many, many hours over the last year working on this topic to try to address the concerns of all Georgians related to school safety across our state?
Thank you, Senator. Yes, many hundreds of hours.
And I know that you have spent a lot of time on this topic. And Senator, I just kind of want to, based off of some of the line of questioning that you've been asked, would just to reiterate, isn't it not true that this does not create any unfunded mandate on local school systems across our state?
Senator, that is correct. There are no unfunded mandates. In fact, the state is going all in to help those school systems.
And isn't it further true that we have additional resources in the budget, and we're going to continue to do that through the appropriations process, and the good senator from the 4th to make sure that our K-12 institutions have the resources they need to provide for school safety in their districts?
Senator, you're absolutely right, and it also coincides last year the fact that we fully funded the QBE formula on top of all of that.
That is correct. And isn't it further true that the governor has added additional resources in the budget for counselors for school systems across our state to help with mental health issues or other concerns that may be addressed inside the school systems?
Senator, you're absolutely right. In the addition of those counselors and the additional dollars for each school to use what they need to do, the APEX program and this combined is just an excellent step forward for us.
Would you continue to yield, Senator?
Yes, sir.
Senator, isn't it true that that firearms and weapons are not allowed on K-12 campuses?
That is correct, Senator.
Isn't it further true then, based on the information that your committee was provided and the understanding that we have across the country and the instances that have happened, that it's been a breakdown in communication that has caused the issues that we have seen time and time again in regards to school safety concerns?
Senator, you're exactly right, and communication is the key, and that's what we hope to begin solving with this piece of legislation.
And isn't it further true that this legislation that is before us addresses those communications concerns in our state between local, state, and even federal law enforcement through GSAC, and this will address those communication concerns that may arise if there's ever an issue in our state?
That is exactly correct, Senator. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I thank you for bringing the bill, and I support your legislation.
Thank you, Senator.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Senator, thank you for your hard work on this. Having not been on the study committee or a member of public safety, I just was hoping you could enlighten me a little bit more about what schools are currently doing. I'm assuming some already do threat assessments or they've taken a look at their facilities. Can you explain a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. You know, with having 181 unique school systems in the state of Georgia, different schools are in totally different places, and some are much further along than others, and that usually is based upon their community and the resources that they have available. GMA, as I mentioned earlier, has already done some of those for some folks. Some have already done it themselves. However, we believe having a third party do it, such as GMA, is important. Again, kind of the old adage of not checking your own work, if you will. However, I'm not exactly sure how many have them done up to date.
So you're not sure how many have done their own or contracted through GMA? Do you have any idea of a rough percentage of the 181 that may have
I do not have a
done their
percentage right now. This just lays the foundation that moving forward, they'll get one done, and then every 4 years it will be revisited.
So every school building within a district would be assessed underneath
Absolutely.
this legislation. Is that just schools where the students are, or would that include any facility under the control of each school district?
It will be any facility of which students will be going in and out of.
Okay, thank you. will you yield for another question?
Certainly.
I have heard a few concerns about profiling, or that there could be some issues related to profiling within this legislation. I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit.
Earlier in the committee process, we were looking at a data sharing solution similar to what Virginia had put into place. It ran into some questions, and we did not want to slow the overall bill down, so we took that out of this bill intentionally, and we were working with that separately so we can address all those concerns and likely bring a different piece of legislation in order to address what we think is important for data sharing, but it is not in this bill.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Final question. Chair recognizes the senator from the 29th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I yield.
Sir, is it not true that most law enforcement agencies and large fire departments in the state of Georgia already do threat assessments for structures within their community?
Senator, thank you for that question. And being prior law enforcement, you know well that our first responders do those very things and are working with the community in order to do those.
Thank you. Do you further yield?
I yield.
Senator, is it not true that local law enforcement in large cities and large fire departments already partner up with GEMA, doing threat assessments of critical infrastructure within communities, including school districts, school buses, transportation, and other things at no cost to GEMA?
That is correct, Senator. That great partnership between the state and our local agencies has allowed us to make sure that we have not had any issues today, and we're constantly looking forward. This will help to codify that and take it to the next level.
Thank you. And finally, if you would yield once more.
Certainly.
Thank you for all the hard work you and the committee did on protecting my 3 granddaughters who attend public school in Muskogee County.
Thank you, Senator.
You have one more question. Do you yield?
I yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 24th.
Senator yield.
I yield, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the great hard work you've done for us. But as an elected official, isn't it one of our main important duties is to make sure that we protect the people of the great state of the great people, the great state of Georgia?
Senator, I could not agree with you more. Our number one priority over all else is to offer protection for the people of our state.
And is it not true that our governor has said he's going to make sure the people from Georgia comes first?
Our governor is doing an extraordinary job of keeping Georgians first.
And is it not true that we could say this bill is a bill that where we're going to make our children first?
I agree. This is definitely making Georgia's children first. Thank you so much, Senator.
One final question. Isn't it true, if someone votes against this bill, we've not been doing the best thing we can do for the great children of our state?
I couldn't imagine anybody wanting to
Thanks,
vote
sir.
red, Senator. Mr. President, thank you for the time. Senators, I would ask your favorable vote on this most important matter.
Thank you, Senator, for your hard work on this. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 47, the nays are 8. This bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 20?
Senate Bill 20 by Senator Red of the 33rd and others. A bill will be titled enactment, Chapter 60 of Title 36 of the OCGA, relating to general provisions, relative provisions applicable to counties and municipal corporations, so as to provide for the establishment of banking improvement zones, to encourage opening of banks in areas underserved by banks, to provide for definitions, to provide for application and standards of approval for a banking improvement zone, to provide for the establishment of agreement for the deposit of public funds in banks within a banking improvement zone, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
This time, the chair would like to recognize a senator from the 33rd to speak to Senate Bill 20.
Thank you, Mr. President. My fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and y'all, I'm here today to present to you Senate Bill 20, which is in a banking improvement zone. This bill will allow governments to petition the Department of Community Affairs to designate a banking improvement zone where residents have insufficient access to banks. The local government would then deposit its funds into the bank zone. This bill was approved and helped crafted by the Department of Community Affairs, the State Banking Authority, and the chair of the Cobb County Commissioners. It will empower urban and rural Georgia areas where banking zones do not exist, and I ask for your favorable vote, and I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. The bill having received the requisite constitutional majority is therefore passed. I'd like to welcome back to the chamber former Senator Preston Smith is with us here this morning. Thank you for joining us. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 9th to recognize some folks in the gallery.
Mr. President, I'd like to recognize Georgia Gwinnett College, who is here in the gallery today. Georgia Gwinnett Day here at the Capitol, and let everybody know they're here and show our appreciation of them. They'll have some gathering time a little bit later over in the CLOB. Thank you guys for being here. Go Grizzlies.
Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 71?
Senate Bill 71 by Senator Watson, the first and others. A bill will be titled enactment Article 4 of Chapter 7, Title 31 of the OCGA, relating to county municipal hospital authorities, so as to revise provisions relating to the sale or lease of a hospital by a hospital authority, to provide for the investment of funds by certain hospital authorities and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Health and Human Services offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 71. The bill will be titled enactment Article 4 of Chapter 7, Title 31 of the OCGA, relating to county municipal hospital authorities, so as to revise provisions relating to the sale or lease of a hospital by a hospital authority and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize a senator from the 1st to speak to Senate Bill 71.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's my pleasure today to present to us the Senate Bill 71. This just does just two things, but let me give you a little bit of background first. Our hospital, which does the lion's share of the indigent care in Savannah, Georgia, was bought out, and the hospital, all the bonds, which were guaranteed by the county commission and the county, I should say, the county citizens who are guaranteeing this, all the bonds were paid off, and the hospital and property were all sold. So this hospital authority did not have a hospital, yet it had a large fund that was put into an irrevocable trust. That money, actually the interest on that money, can only be used for indigent care. So this bill does two things. It allows that hospital authority that does not have a hospital to use that money for the indigents. That's already done. But this bill does two things. The first thing it does is that it allows that money to be invested as the ERS or TRS, and 30% of that can be used in mutual funds, and the other remains in the conservative, a little bit more conservative usual way of investing. And then the other thing it does is sort of the trend of health care. It allows, instead of the hospital authority to be used only for inpatient hospital care, it allows it to be used as an outpatient in things like federally health qualified clinics and other clinics like we have in Savannah, like the J.C. Lewis Center, which are only used for indigents. So it does those two things. Allows the authority to put that money to be invested like it is in the ERS, only 30% in the mutual fund-like activities, and it only does the change from the hospital to the health care. Mr. President, that's what the bill does. I'd ask for your favorable consideration. I'm happy to accept any questions.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
Yes, I do.
Thank you for your earlier explanation about the bill. I did have one follow-up question. What happens once these funds are invested if the investment goes really south and you lose money?
Well, it's number one, the 70%, and obviously much more conservative, so it would certainly be very difficult to lose that, just as in the teacher's retirement or ERS and TRS. So the 30% is the same as what would happen there. If they're in the mutual funds would go down. So that's the way it is. Not lost, but you got to remember again, it is not the principal that can be used, only the interest. So the interest on that would not be able to be used.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd. The rules chairman.
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to commend the senator for his bill, and let me ask you something. Can you tell me about, with the CON and all that other stuff, does this have any business or any connection to that issue?
No, this does not have any connection at all to that.
Okay, thank you. And does it have any connection to the senator from Ocilla?
You know, it could if his hospital were acquired locally and they had the hospital authority without the hospital, then yes, it could be related to that.
You have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 2nd to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I applaud the senator from the 1st. Senate Bill 71 is a good bill. From my recollection, it only affects one hospital, and that's the hospital in Chatham County. It works for Chatham County, and it probably won't affect any other entity, as my understanding. So I think it's a good measure. It's great for Chatham County, and I urge you to vote in favor. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will.
The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Is there objection or agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you read the caption on Senate Bill 91?
Senate Bill 91 by Senator Huffstetler of 52nd, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 23250.3 of the OCGA relating to educational institutions exempted from application of part relative to non-public post-secondary educational institutions so as to provide for an exemption for dental schools meeting certain criteria and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Higher Education Committee offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 91, a bill entitled Enactment Code Section 23250.3 of the OCGA relating to educational institutions exempted from application of part relative to non-public post-secondary educational institutions so as to provide for an exception for orthodontic schools meeting certain criteria and for other purposes. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to speak to Senate Bill 91.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is about ending unneeded bureaucracy. The Georgia School of Orthodontics will be graduating 18 graduates this September, and even without this bill, that will continue. This won't have any effect on it. What it will have effect on is the redundant accreditation that they're currently doing. All the medical schools are nationally accredited and not part of this accreditation process that they've been a part of. And in fact, the school I graduated from, Emory, when they had a dental school, they also were exempt, considered the medical school. So this bill is trying to clarify that they are not part of the additional accreditation that's not needed. They are accredited like every other dental program by CODA, the Council on Dental Accreditation, nationally. We did hear from the Dental Association that they were concerned that this could start applying to dental hygienist schools and some others, and so they asked that we change the language from dental school to orthodontic school. We did that, and they had no further objection to this bill. If there's no other questions, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 53, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. We have a list of bills that we would like to be read for the first time. I'd like to recognize the majority leader.
I ask unanimous consent that the rules be suspended to allow bills to be first read and referred to committee.
The majority leader has asked for unanimous consent that the rules be suspended and bills to be read for the first time and referred to committee. Is there objection? Hearing none, will the secretary read the bills?
Senate Bill 206 by Senator Jordan VI and others, a bill entitled Enactment Chapter 24, Title 33 of the OCGA, relating to insurance generally so as to provide for pre-existing conditions under short-term health benefit policies or
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 207 by Senator Burke of the 11th and others, a bill be titled and act to amend Chapter 10 of Title 49 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Board of Physician Workforce so as to change the name of such board.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 209 by Senator Jones the 10th and others, a bill be titled and act to amend Code Section 201433 of the OCGA relating to indicators of quality of learning in individual schools.
Education.
Senate Bill 210 by Senator Moss the 53rd and others, a bill be titled and act to amend Part 15 of Article 6 of Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to miscellaneous provisions under the Quality Basic Education Act. So as
Education.
Senate Bill 211 by Senator Harper the 7th and others, a bill be titled and act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 2 of Title 26 of the OCGA relating to advertisement and sale of meat generally. So
Agriculture.
Senate Bill 212 by Senator Martin the 9th and others, a bill be titled and act to amend Code Section 4527 of the OCGA relating to examination of applicants so as to revise the criteria.
Education.
Senate Resolution 265, a resolution by Senator Harper the 7th, a resolution honoring the life of Mr. Lawrence James Gillis and dedicating a bridge in his memory for other purposes.
Transportation.
Senate Bill 213 by Senator Heath the 31st and others, a bill will be titled and act to amend Article 2, Chapter 5 of Title 21 of the OCGA relating to campaign contributions so as to revise the content of and certain reporting times.
Ethics.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Thursday, February 28th.
Mr. Secretary, will you read the announcements?
Rules will meet upon adjournment of 450 of the Capitol. Regulated Industries and Utilities Dealer Franchise Agreement Review Subcommittee will meet upon adjournment of rules in 450 of the Capitol. Public Safety will meet at 1 p.m. in Mez 1. Education and Youth will meet at 2 p.m. in 307 of the CLB. Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security will meet at 2 p.m. in 310 of the CLB. State Institutions of Property will meet at 2:30 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Economic Development and Tourism has been canceled. Health and Human Services will meet at 3 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Natural Resources and the Environment will meet at 3 p.m. 310 of the CLB. Judiciary will meet at 4 p.m. in 307 of the CLB. And Retirement will meet at 4 p.m. in Mez 1. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Doesn't look like any senators have any announcements to make. Nope. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 28th, 2019. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We stand adjourned.